From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to talk some money and politics with with Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, syndicated columnist, and with Steve Moore, Committee to Unleash Prosperity Hotline, and WABC radio host More Money, which plays right after this show on many of these same stations. So two of you, welcome back. Liz Peek, how is Trump's economic message? And did Trump win the debate? I'm reading some of these liberal media. People are saying, well, Joe Biden was a catastrophe, but Donald Trump really didn't win the debate. Yeah, he didn't really win the debate. Like, he wasn't there. I don't know. You didn't really. The betting odds are now Trump 60, Biden 30. That's in the betting markets, but push that aside. Did Trump win? How was his economic message? Anyway, Liz, how was his message? I haven't talked to you since the debate. I got to hear this.
I know. Yeah. So obviously Trump won. All the polling shows he won. And so was it only because Joe Biden collapsed and was such an embarrassment? No, I don't think so. I think, first of all, Larry, what did Trump do? Trump didn't go crazy. He didn't rise to the bait when challenged by some pretty awful things that Joe Biden said. Mm-hmm. To be sure, some of the debate devolved into completely ludicrous comparisons of who could hit a golf ball farther. I think, by the way, that Trump won that exchange because the idea of whatever. Anyway, on issues, and particularly on taxes and finance and so forth, I thought he did a reasonably good job, but I have to say he missed some opportunities because for all that the media has come out and said, well, yeah, Joe Biden was terrible, but my gosh, they should have been fact-checking Trump all the time. No one fact-checked Joe Biden. I mean, he had all these continued lies about the economy being in a shambles when he took over, and the Trump tax cuts, listen to this one, being responsible for Joe Biden's inflation. I mean, some of the stuff was just completely ludicrous and out of this world, but no one seems to have focused on any of that. So I think Trump did a good job not kind of going crazy with all of Joe Biden's lying about this stuff. I thought he could have made a more persuasive case, but he did well enough. And I think on issues, obviously Joe Biden was incomprehensible. So on issues, he certainly won the day.
You know, Steve, it's interesting. Liz is right. Right at the top, I was talking to John Carney of Breitbart about the same thing. Right at the top of the debate, Joe Biden sort of goes into this thing how he inherited an economy that was collapsing, blah, blah, blah. And the problem is that, of course, led their administration to go into this massive stimulus, $1.9 trillion stimulus, which was the original sin, quote unquote, and led to the inflation. Right. But they're still keeping that up, and it just factually was not true. We had a V-shaped recovery, quite a remarkable. And I thought Trump did a pretty good job defending his COVID actions too. But Biden lied about that. Nobody. But let me just ask you, Steve, the same question: did Trump win, or did Biden lose, or is it both true that Biden lost and Trump won?
Well, I think, look, the takeaway from the debate is that the chance that Joe Biden will be president this time next year is close to zero, in my opinion. I mean, I think it was such an awful performance. It was elder abuse. I mean, and the Democrats knew this, and they hid it from the American public. And it was, I was cringing, actually. And, I'm a little hard of hearing, as you know, Larry, so I don't hear that well. But most of the people I talked to agree with me. I couldn't even understand what he was saying. Right. Seriously, I couldn't figure out what he was saying. And so I think there's a little too much euphoria on the Republican side of the aisle because, as I wrote at the Hotline the other day, I think that the chances are low that Joe Biden will be their nominee. I think they're going to go for a pinch hitter, and that's a reset for them. And I think the Republicans made a big mistake in agreeing to this debate before their convention. It played into the Democrats' hands, and we may be talking about, a Michelle Obama or the governor of California or Gretchen Whitmer or someone who would be even at this stage, even Kamala Harris would be a vast improvement over Biden.
Well, I just have to ask, all right, both of you, so we're going to have a jump ball on this.
Yeah.
I don't understand how. In other words, Biden said yesterday I'm going to stay in the race, and I'm going to be there to debate in September.
Good.
And
Excellent.
The Democratic National Convention, they would have to. I mean, I had Kevin McCarthy on the show, and I've talked about this with other people. Because of rule changes and because of complications with the Iowa state and the Iowa delegates, they'd have to do something. They've got to move before August 7th, but no one is moving. I mean, they'd have to actually in other words, technically, physically, I don't see how they could do it because they won't have a traditional open convention in the middle of August where you could have a delegate fight over president and vice president. They're going to do all that way before. It's got to be done way before August 7th because of this Ohio story, which I don't fully understand. I mean,
can I address that?
Yeah, I mean, how's this going to happen?
Because look what happened 4 years ago. Who was the front runner for the Democrats? It was Bernie. And what happened was the Democratic leaders went to the candidates, gathered them in the room, and said, "No, Bernie, it's not going to be you. It's going to be Joe Biden." And they basically handpicked Joe Biden to be the one. And that's what they did tell Buttigieg and the others. So that's exactly what they're going to do here. They're going to say, and by the way, how in the world could Biden, if he can't possibly be the nominee? He can barely get out an intelligible sentence. I don't think that the Democrats only care about one thing, and that's power, and they're not going to give it up.
But, Steve, I would suggest to you the difference between this round and last time 4 years ago, Bernie Sanders had not won sufficient number of delegates to win the nomination. And Joe Biden has. There's no question. So, I mean, I like you, Larry, I want to understand all the rules and stuff, and it's a little opaque. The Economist came out with a piece saying there is no way that unless Joe Biden steps down, there is no way he's going anywhere. And I would suggest to both of you, obviously Jill Biden has come in for a tremendous thrashing since all of this took place because she's the one person who might be able to talk Joe out of running. And it's pretty clear she doesn't want to do that. My contention is she's protecting her family. And I don't think this is far-fetched. I think if Joe Biden is in the White House, Hunter Biden doesn't go to prison. I think if Joe Biden is not in the White House, there's a pretty good chance that Hunter and maybe James Biden, maybe even Joe Biden goes to jail at some point for things that we don't know about. So I think it's kind of logical that she's fighting so hard to keep him running. I can't really think of any other humane reason why she would be doing that.
You know, before Steve falls off the cliff entirely, and before we have too much debate about who has a lower golf handicap, I just want to inject in a semi-serious note a great historical figure, Edith Wilson. All right, who was Edith Wilson? She was Woodrow Wilson's wife, and Edith, because he was incapacitated, now he had a stroke. So Joe Biden may have dementia. I don't know. But Edith Wilson was president for the last 18 months of the Wilson administration in the 1910s. Okay, it was really 1919 and 1920. So Jill Biden's the de facto president right now. And I guess she wants to run again. I mean, I guess that's the thing. Because I will say this. I mean, Liz's point is important here. And others, political experts have said this. For anything to happen, Joe has to voluntarily pull out. Yes, and I don't think Edith Wilson, Jill Biden, will not let him pull out.
Well, you're right. I agree with both of you that the only way this happens is Biden. They can't force him out. But what they'll do is they'll just show him the polls and say, you're gonna lose a landslide reelection. One of the things that came through loud and clear in that debate is these two candidates just detest each other. I mean, they can barely even look at each other. And so look, I hope you guys are right. I really do. And I'm just worried about it. I thought Trump I give him a B minus. I thought he was okay. I wish he'd been a little bit more factual and not just keep saying, you're the worst president ever. But he behaved himself, and that was really important because that's what people wanted to see. He was much more presidential. And this is a point you've made, Larry, many times in recent months, which is Trump has really grown. He's a better candidate today than he was 4 and 8 years ago.
Yes, and he had great riposte. I'll give him a B plus. I agree. I would have liked to see some facts. By the way, he didn't mention the tax-exempt tips, which I think is a big winner. And
I agree.
He could have smoked Biden out, but he had a lot of good moments, some fabulous answers, and some great riposte. But I think Edith Wilson, Jill Biden. I mean, we all have to write on the TV this week. Well, I'm not going to be around, but anyway, we have to have a whole segment on Edith Wilson. Maybe I'll get the two of you to come on and talk about that. It's a fabulous thing. I got to take a quick break.
Can I also say one more thing about Steve's comment about the grandees of the Democratic Party? You've already had Clinton and Obama come out and say, no, he's fine. Yeah. It was just one bad night.
Yeah. Oh, that's good news.
No, they did. Yeah. No, Lizzie's right. She's 100% right. They, the New York Times said resign, but the New York Times will endorse him. You wait and see. All right. Yeah, sure. We're going to come right back. Liz Peek and Steve Moore. We're going to talk about Chevron deference and Enron decision for the Supreme Court. I'm Kudlow. I'll be right back.
Larry Kudlow. From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Welcome back, folks. We're talking to Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, Steve Moore, WABC radio host of More Money. I want to talk about the Supremes, very hyperactive yesterday. I want to start with the Enron defense because it has big implications for the trial, J6 Trump trial. The Enron financial securities law, Sarbanes-Oxley, was used inappropriately by special counsel, and they busted all these protesters, including Donald Trump. 2 of the 4 charges against Trump on J6 came from the so-called Enron, which is the intent to obstruct government activities or impede government proceedings. And the Supreme Court said, no, that's not what it was about. That's not what it was for. It was financial security problems. So, Liz Peek, this is a big deal, and the special counsel is going to have to go back and rewrite his charges, and a lot of people, 300 people who were busted on this are going to be released from this charge.
Yeah, so a welcome ruling because it was an absurd use of a financial securities issue to put people in jail for wandering onto the Capitol grounds, and that's basically what they did. I have to say, Larry, reading that legal thing some months ago and rereading it today, I kind of wonder why Hillary Clinton isn't in jail. I mean, really what it has to do with is destroying documents and other records that might constitute some sort of obstruction of justice. And if she didn't do that when she bleached her computer and did all that stuff to her server, I don't know who else has been more egregiously in violation of that law. But anyway, obviously it does not pertain. And I think it was a very broad, and obviously the Supreme Court said it's very broad and overly broad and inappropriate use of Sarbanes-Oxley to go after these guys. So, it's going to be interesting whether in some of those cases, whether there's anything else they can charge them with. Trespassing, do you go to prison for trespassing? I mean, because that's what I think a lot of things will devolve down to.
Steve Moore, first of all, I thought Sarbanes-Oxley was a lousy law. Overregulation. I mean, really. I mean, Enron did bad things. I get that. But Sarbanes-Oxley, I mean, I just think that George W. Bush should never have let that thing go through. But now what's going to happen for Special Counsel Jack Smith, he's going to have to go back to the drawing board. And this is going to totally, I was talking to Greg Jarrett about this earlier, this is going to totally postpone any of these J6 Washington, D.C. trials. And this is, the Supremes are going to probably rule also on immunity on Monday, and they're going to send it back to the lower court, and they're going to probably provide immunity for much of the civil and criminal. So this, again, the politics of this are so favorable to Donald Trump, don't you think?
I do, and I can't improve on what Liz was just saying, so I want to just pivot, if I could, for a minute to the other decision, which is the one on Chevron. And this is just, I'm going to keep this very simple for people because we're not all lawyers and economists and so on. What has been happening for the last 50 years in this country is that we created an unconstitutional fourth branch of government, Larry, and that is these regulatory agencies, the EPA, the FDA, the FTIC, the FTC, and these are fiefdoms that basically have become judge, jury, and hangman in terms of making laws and prosecuting people. And this is unconstitutional because we have three branches of government, not four. And what the court said quite appropriately is that the Congress has unlawfully designated lawmaking authority to these agencies. And I say it is about time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
By the way, this follows the West Virginia versus EPA, which was similar, which was just basically said that the EPA did not have the direct congressional mandated authority to do what it's doing with respect to emissions and clean air and so forth and so on. Now this one is even writ more broadly. All these regulators. Now, Liz, this is an important thing because the Bidens, have usurped the regulatory agencies to run the country, to run the economy, basically. That's their policy. This is central planning at its worst.
So so people should question, why have they done that? They've done it because a lot of the stuff they're trying to push through is not popular. If it were popular, Congress presumably could get itself together and pass laws. That's what they've really usurped is the power of Congress. And, the liberals are declaiming this decision saying, they're trying to make judicial authority the ultimate one. No, they're not. What they're doing is taking away the authority for Congress. Congress is supposed to set laws. And some of these things, going back to the EPA thing under Obama, it was a huge law. It had to do with all energy being produced in America. It would affect every single American. So you're telling me the White House, in a sort of whimsical moment, and I know it's not really a whimsical moment, it's an agenda-driven moment, can make that decision? No, that's just wrong.
Stalin would be proud.
Yeah.
Really?
And by the way, what we've seen is when the government, and boy, this is just something we have to keep pounding away on, when they expand their footprint, it almost always goes wrong because you have a narrow group of people making decisions for the entire country. They're generally speaking not very well equipped to do it. They do it in a rush. And a lot of these things are done to avoid election deadlines or whatever. It's bad decision making and it's bad governing.
You think, Steve, serious question. So they've made this decision. Supreme Court made this decision. Just like the Supreme Court made a decision on canceling student loans. The Bidens will ignore it. Biden says he's going to ignore it. So we only got 6 months to go for them. But I don't think anything's going to change unless Trump wins. And then you have a whole new planning operation to rein in these regulatory agencies and, for that matter, the whole federal bureaucracy. That's what it's going to take.
Look, the irony of this, of course, is that Biden is the one who accuses Trump of being a dictator and a threat to democracy.
Right.
He doesn't follow the rules of Congress. He doesn't. He's just basically violating the dictates from the Supreme Court. And you're right. He's going to ignore this, and maybe he's the one who should be on trial here. But to Liz's point, by the way, I know we're running out of time. The reason Congress punts on this is they don't want to make these decisions, Liz. They don't want to have to take on this. We don't even have a Congress anymore. They don't even pass laws. It's all done by these agencies.
Yeah. But that's wrong.
Yeah, I know it is.
Well, if you get 55 Republican senators, and if they pick up 30, 40 House seats, because I think Trump's going to have coattails. Good coattails. I mean, they've got to message it right. Kellyanne Conway was on, and they've got to message it right. But the fact is, you got a chance, and then you'll have real change. That's what it's going to take. You're going to have real change. Because this time, Republicans agree with Trump. In 2017, Republicans were fighting Trump. Anyway, you two are fabulous. Liz Peek, thank you ever so much. Steve Moore, thanks.
Thank you.
Steve's got more money on many of these same stations coming up. I'm Kudlow. We'll see you next weekend, folks. Thanks very much.